Welcome to part 7 of the Better Swimmer or Calmer Water series. The question we want to ask ourselves in this part of the journey is, who are you swimming for? We're floating on our back now, we're catching our breath as we talked about in session 6, and then a big question starts to emerge. I remember years ago, a coffee company I was working with, one of the owners just happened to be behind the barista bar area. And he said to the server, the barista, "This is for the bald gentleman over there," talking about me. And I remember thinking, I'm bald? It's sometimes hard to see in the mirror reality. Of course, I could have been like, I'm a gentleman. I remember I was at the dentist years ago, and he said, "Man, they really should have broke your jaw early on. The way your smile cross bites, this is not good." And I'm just like, I'd never noticed that before, and then it made me super self-conscious about my smile. I can remember a friend in college saying this to me: "I have a hard time believing God will use you the way you think when you use your mouth the way you do." I remember a guy I'd hired who got angry at me one day and looked at me and said, "Chris, you haven't surveyed the world." He was right. I was very arrogant in my opinions. Remember my first coach that I ever worked with said, "You got some worth issues, Chris. You got to figure these out." Look, we don't know ourselves as well as we think, and it is so hard to see in the mirror the truth of who we are. Working with a psychologist years ago, I had told him about something that I had done for someone else and realized I wasn't doing it for myself, and he said, "Chris, that's servant leadership." And I remember going, I want more of that, but I don't have a lot of it. When you can see and shift what I'm going to walk you through in this part of becoming a better swimmer, you will become free. Now, the way that you know that you're not seeing something you need to and not shifting where you need to is because you're numbing out. You could be numbing out in big ways: too many garage beers, binging too much on some activity. You could be obsessively gaining knowledge to try to comfort some hole within yourself. Watching the news confirmed your ideologies are correct, falling into conspiracy theories, whatever it looks like. Being obsessed with your fun socks at work because you don't really love your mission. Wherever you find yourself, what's happening at the core when you need a shift is you're concerned with two questions. Do people like me? And do they think I'm doing a good job? You may feel one more than another, but in your most stressful, insecure moments, you're going to feel these questions. And when you feel these questions, the way that faith so often answers it, I think it's so terrible, it misses the deepest expression, is on one end, one ditch, people say, well, you just got to suffer well. When you're in a period of a choppy water and you're trying to swim your way through that, you just got to suffer well. Other times, faith will answer with, you need to drum up some kind of energy in prayer to see this circumstance change. Now, is it true that there are moments that we suffer well? Absolutely. Is it true that we can see circumstances change? Absolutely. But both of those are ditches. There is a deeper reality we can draw from, and that's what we're going to look at in this lesson. To really get an appreciation for this, we have to understand that while we're in the choppy waters, we are swimming from somewhere to somewhere, and the goal matters. I mean, if my wife asked me to go to the store and I came back and she goes, "Did you get the stuff?" And I go, "No, I tried to go to the store but didn't make it." The nature of leadership there are just some things we have to get done. There are some things we have to accomplish. There are some places we have to get. And I am all in on you seeing those visions materialize. But at the core of what's happening, when you're floating on your back, catching your breath for a minute, is you're wrestling with this one question: who am I really swimming for? Because that's going to make you unstoppable to get to this goal that you need to get to. The best way to illustrate this for you is a story out of John 13. John 13. Jesus does one of the most amazing acts, and I think there's a part of this story that's overlooked and misunderstood so often. Now, in the context of this story, because I'm not going to read it all to you, one of his disciples doesn't get it. We could think of him as the number 2. You know, the most dangerous thing in the world is narcissistic, manipulative, very powerfully influential number 1. second most dangerous type of leader in the world is a number 2 that doesn't understand what the number 1's doing when the number 1's healthy. So Jesus, being the number 1, healthy, has a vision of transformation. Judas, operating the purse, operating the money like a number 2, doesn't get what Jesus is doing and thinks this falsely. If I get Jesus backed in a corner, he's going to come out swinging and he's going to bring this political revolution we need. So Judas is betraying Jesus to elicit this reaction he wants to see. Falsely, Judas thinks he knows better. So what's happening in this story is a dismantling, a breaking down of what Jesus' true mission was about and how all of the disciples are either with this mission or not. And it's the story where Jesus washes his disciples' feet. Now, in this story where Jesus washes his disciples' feet, I hear the part that I'm going to highlight to you now, skipped over all the time, and it is the difference maker in the story. Everybody wants to skip to verse 17 where it's like, okay, Jesus said, do this like he did. But look at verse 3. You can listen to me like I've been encouraging in this series to go study these stories for yourself. Verse 3, Jesus knew, experientially knew, it wasn't just mental assent, Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power and that he had come from God and was returning to God. Jesus knew all things were under his power, that he had come from God and was returning to God. So what does he do? Bring a political revolution? No. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. Whoa. What Jesus does when he knows who he is, the security of his identity, and the clarity of his mission, he now goes and builds community. That's what he's been doing. And he builds this community by how? Washing his disciples' feet. They're getting dirt on their feet as a natural part of just living at this time. And he does this servant action that would have been a lowly servant doing this because it's so dirty. And in an intimate way, he takes off his outer garments to wash his disciples' feet. How could he take that action? It's not something he's forcing. It's because he knows all things under his power, that he had come from God and was returning to God. Now, I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead to the end scene, or you're not going to appreciate the drama of the moment. Verse 17, Jesus saying, now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. He wants you to wash feet. Now, I'm going to save this for the end. Not literally. Don't think about that. That's so cheesy and weird. You don't need to be literally washing people's feet. It was an approach. It was a mindset. But that mindset came out of that secure identity. Jesus expects you to live as he lived. He does not expect you to live as he lived, that you don't also experience what he knew experientially in his heart and mind. And catch this. This is so powerful. When we are in Christ, what is our position? We are seated with Christ in the heavenlies. That, yeah, I'm sitting here doing this video, but I'm also seated with Christ in the heavenlies. In other words, there's an internal reality, deeper and bigger and more real, like conceptual, experimental quantum physics. Imaginary time is just as real as time. That all things are under the feet of Jesus and all things are under my feet. I co-reign and co-rule. Not to bring my agenda, but to cooperate with his agenda. That's the process of becoming a better swimmer. So I can know that all things are under my power because they're all under his power. I also know that I am made in the image of God. I have come from God and I am returning to God. I am not God. I am not Jesus the Christ, where human and divine come together, but he is my prototype for humanity. Humanity and divinity come together in me like they did for Jesus. Not at the same quality, right? But he shows me what humanity is. He shows me what humanity can be. Even though I am not God, like Jesus, I don't share in the fullness of that. I do share in it. And I am from God and returning to God. So what does that allow me to do? To have a mindset where what I do isn't for me, it's for you. Here is the biggest shift that has to occur in your life in the Better Swimmer process. That you stop swimming for yourself. Who are you swimming for? I got to show them I can do it. Look, that chip on your shoulder is going to get you there. You're going to achieve, but eventually it won't be enough. Who are you swimming for? I got to keep the bank account at a certain level so I don't feel bad. You say it's for your family, but you don't want to feel it. Maybe for some of you it is. It's not enough to swim for yourself. It's not enough to swim for others. And we're going to see what this story takes us to. So Jesus comes up to Peter, like, you got to go to the hard guy. That's a good way to facilitate a group dynamic, because the bigger they are, the harder they fall. You're not going to wash me. Well, look, unless I wash you, I have no part of you. Well, then wash my whole body. Well, you don't need your whole body washed. That's what we've been doing. I'm just going to wash your feet. Dirt wasn't some evil choice Peter had made. It was the natural part of him living. When we learn to know an identity in Christ, it power washes our soul so that our spirit is connected fully to the reality that is always ours, that we are never separated from God through Jesus. And as a result of that, we are power washed clean. But just by nature of living, I lose center and my feet get dirty and I need my feet washed. And I need that connection. I need that reminder. I need that intimacy. What he's teaching Peter doesn't even fully yet understand. Look, we live in the world of serving companies and leaders, and I love it. We don't actively, obviously, connect the dots like I'm doing here for you. In so many environments, we walk through transformation and let people go find the deeper realities on their own. But we live in a world of deliverables, right? And I get it, we should. This is what we're delivering to you. But I love what Jesus says in this story, because this is what I want to say oftentimes when we're delivering transformative experiences for companies. You don't yet fully get what I'm doing, and that's okay. That's okay, because it's going to work itself out. We're kicking off a process. And so, yeah, we live in a world of business deliverables, but there are times I want to say, look, we're kicking off a process that's going to be playing out over years and years and years and years, and you don't fully get what's going to happen. What Jesus is instituting here is for us a model that we do not lead for our own validation. We lead for impact. It's not for what we can get out of it. We're not swimming for ourselves and our insecurities. And we're not swimming for others in a way that we make them the center of who we are. Catch this. We are swimming with God. Then for others. That's what's so key. I'm not here swimming for myself. I'm swimming with God. God is with me in the water. All things have been placed under my power. I've come from God and returning to God. I am swimming with God. Now I understand. Who am I swimming for? This is what's so important. With God, for you. Now I can lead for impact, not validation. I would say 90% or greater in stressful moments of what most leaders are doing. They are leading for their own validation, not impact. They are swimming for their own validation, not impact, because this order gets off. And they're trying to comfort their own insecurities, or they're trying to make others the center of who they are. And what we see here in this story is Jesus dismantling Judas' ideology that this transformation is somehow political. Instead, it is a bottom-up micro-communities transformed. And he is dismantling Peter and his false notions to understand the basis of how we live. And Jesus says, what I'm doing for you, I expect you to do for others. I want you to have the internal reality I have. All things are under your power. You've come from God and returning to God, so you can swim with God for others. Look, I am irritated that business leadership has defined the ceiling for Christian leadership. So in business leadership, it's like, you need to get wisdom for others. And then we quote a proverb. There's wisdom in getting much counsel. Look how smart the Bible is. Forget all that. Secular business leadership should not determine the ceiling. There's such a greater reality, and it's this. When you, business owner or leader, are connected to this truth, you have come from God and are returning to God, and all things are placed under your power. It's your job to wash feet. Not literally. You can't be close to everybody in the organization. I get it. But there should be some that you're close enough to know their need. And to be the kind of leader who can wash feet, who can serve with a motivation of impact, not validation. And you won't perfectly do it, and I don't perfectly do it. I just know how to recognize this with such clarity now. I can see and shift and be free. So when I leave this place and I start leading for validation, as I do sometimes, I can go back to leading for impact. I hope you become the better swimmer and learn who you're swimming for, with God, for others. It's so much more fun that way. Peace.